everybody. Josh here for Whiskey Wednesday for Argonaut Wine and Liquor. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, Mr. Dan McKee from Michter's Distillery, master distiller there, and one of my favorite distilleries in Kentucky. I mean, I love your guys' product. I'm really excited to jump into this one.
Thank you.
So first in the glass we have your small batch bourbon.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, one, this, but also kind of Michter's and how you guys came about and, all the fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, we'll start in since we've got a pour right away. I always found people listen more when there's whiskey in the glass. But we're going to start with our US 1 small batch Kentucky straight bourbon. To me, this is a very nice classic sipping bourbon. Those caramels, vanillas, stone fruits, a touch of oak. It's just a beautiful whiskey, whether you want to sip it neat or enjoy it in a great cocktail. Now remember, the 4 that's in front of us, the small batch bourbon is part of what we call the core 4. This is really that foundation. There's something here for everybody, and I love that we're going to go through them today. But and US 1, just for fun, it does signify America's first whiskey company. So.
The brand itself has a very long and rich history. It dates back to 1753 as a distillery in Schaefferstown, Pennsylvania. John Schenck, a Swiss Mennonite farmer, began distilling rye whiskey. Rye would have been that predominant crop grown back then. Mm-hmm. By the mid-1800s, it was sold to Abraham Bomberger, so Bomberger's distillery that would have carried on up until 1919 with U.S. Prohibition. Once it closed doors, like most distilleries, it reopened in 1934. Changed ownership several times, but by the 1950s, Lou Foreman became the owner, renamed the distillery using parts of his 2 sons named Michael, Peter, combined it to make Michter's as we know it. Unfortunately, by 1989, the American whiskey industry was struggling, and unfortunately, Michter's filed for bankruptcy and abandoned the trademarks and essentially lost to history. So in the 90s, though, we're family-owned. 3 brothers out of New York, the Maliocos, who own Chatham Imports as well, our parent company for premium spirits and wines and so forth. Joe Malioco, the youngest brother, was tasked with starting a whiskey company for Chatham. He was working with a very good friend and mentor, Richard Dick Newman, at the time as well, and Joe being aware and knew of Michter's because in the late 70s he was tasked with selling these little King Tut miniatures. Remember, that's the time when they were putting whiskeys and decanters and all of that to help generate sales and so forth. So they went through the process of acquiring the trademarks, and thankfully after doing so, they resurrected the brand to Kentucky because Joe, as I mentioned, was working with Richard Dick Newman. He would have been the CEO of Austin Nichols Wild Turkey back in the day. He used to run Old Crow, Old Taylor, but he recommended to Joe that he should resurrect the brand to Kentucky because of resources, our natural limestone water, our climate, and also you have distillers and like myself, Pam Howman, our second master distiller for Michter's, and Andrea Wilson, who is our COO and master of maturation. So I oversee distilling. She oversees the maturing, but she's a Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Famer as well. So, but it's been pretty cool. And to have whiskeys like the 4 that we have in front of us, I'm very proud of. As a premium whiskey, we use U.S. grade number 1 non-GMO grains. Corn, rye, malted barley make up our whiskeys. So.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So let's dig right into the bourbon. The both the nose and the palate, super sweet, really easy drinking. This is a fantastic, like you said, neat pour, would be great in a cocktail, but also if you're someone who's kind of new into the category, new into bourbon, I think this is a perfect starting point for you.
Well, I'll say with our core 4 and our whiskeys in general, we want a very rich whiskey, well-balanced, has that nice warm mouthfeel and ultimately smooth. So whether a bourbon's your style, our single barrel rye, and then we'll talk about the original sour mash and the unblended American whiskeys, again, with each having a unique, different profile, but there's something here for everybody. Also, smooth to us isn't just a tagline. We actually do something in the process to actually achieve that, which is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we always talk about 6 signature production techniques that makes Michter special. Being family owned, we're not publicly traded. We don't have shareholders that we have to satisfy. It's really the directive from ownership down to do whatever it takes to make the highest quality whiskey. Okay, so one of those 6 signature production techniques is we enter all our distillate into the barrel at a very low 103 barrel entry proof. That's the lowest of any distillery of scale doing for all their whiskeys. Okay, and the importance of this, to be a bourbon or a rye whiskey, you cannot distill above 160 proof, right? And then you cannot enter it into the barrel higher than 125 proof, and which is industry standard. So we can only add water. So if we're reducing from, let's say, 138 proof off the still and bring it down to 125, we're actually going to continue adding water up front and bring it down to the very low 103. Water is a great hydrolyzer. It helps dissolve the sugars more readily. Also, there's phenolic compounds that the wood contributes into whiskey that creates burn. And remember, I said we want smooth. Over time, it helps transform that whiskey into a much smoother whiskey. And that's so important for us. And if you think about it this way, if we go into the barrel at 103 after 5 to 7 years, which typically these are because we age to a taste profile non-age statement, which is very important. Even our 10-year releases and above, they're never just 10 years in a day. They could be 13, 14 or older. It just depends when do they meet that taste profile we're looking for.
Right.
But if we go in at that 103, let's say 5 to 7 years, we're come out around 110 to 112. Let's say with our bourbon, we're going to bottle to 91.4, so we're going to add, this much water. Someone that went into the barrel at the industry standard of 125, let's say they come out after aging 5 to 7 years around that 135 to 137 range. At bottling time, they're going to add 50% more water that had no influence of the barrel.
Interesting.
And so that's what we know. It's on file at the Filson Historic in Louisville that distillers were going into the barrel in the late 1800s, early 1900s, somewhere around 101 to 105 proof. It was through the years that it started to climb. By 1962, it's, as we know, at 125. Big reason for that was to save costs on barrels. Okay, so we end up having to use more barrels, and down the road we'll have to build more warehouses because it adds up. Those barrels adds up, but again, we feel it increases the quality of whiskey. We're willing to do it. So the second one that we're doing now, this is our US one, single barrel Kentucky straight rye. All our ryes have been single barrel. This one's more that Kentucky style, where we're a little closer to the 51% rye grain in the mash bill. So we do add a little bit more corn, malted barley, which really provides a nice balance of sweetness and spice. So as a rye guy myself, when I get asked what's your daily, actually the US 1 rye here would be that daily. I just love it. It gives you, even though it's a little lower on the rye in the mash bill, it still gives you those beautiful citrus floral notes that you're going to be looking for, a touch of honey, pepper, things like that, and a little bit of oak as well.
I was just about to say, I mean, it's for a rye, this isn't like the big punch in your face dilly rye, right? This is much, it's sweeter, it's softer, it's there's still, like you said, some of those floral herbaceous notes to it, but it's not like, some of the big, like, again, punchy ryes. It's like burn and spice and dill and herbs and all that. So, I
mean, truthfully, what I will say, it's a lot of people will still say it's like a bourbon drinker's rye, but it still gives you plenty of that rye. Even if you're a high rye lover, you're still going to enjoy that because it does have that experience that you're looking for. And for the people that have had the high ryes and it wasn't as enjoyable experience, this backs it down, makes it very approachable. The other great thing is in cocktails, it does so well with other high quality ingredients.
Yeah, and I mean, it was interesting you said the honey note on there, which isn't, a typical tasting note for a rye, but it's really prominent in this one. Like I said, really sweet, easy drinking. I mean, as we say here on Whiskey Wednesday, something you could go through half, 3/4 of a bottle, not really notice it, wake up in some trouble. But but no, that's
Of
I'm a
course,
rye
being responsible.
Right, of course. I'm a rye drinker myself. I like making Manhattans, and I love this rye.
It's funny because I'll find myself making the Manhattan with it, but the old-fashioned, a good Bloody Mary on a Sunday morning with a strip of bacon in it and some olives and whatever else you have, cheeses.
Yeah.
You can get carried away, but no, it's just, again, and that's the beauty of the Core 4, the US 1 lineup here, is there's really, they're not overpowering. They're meant to, again, be very great sipping whiskeys, whether you want to drink it neat or with, an ice cube. I drink neat, but I'll always say if you're going to buy the bottle, no matter which whiskey it is, you should always drink it the way you prefer. But as somebody that's been doing this for over 20 years, the way I was brought up is we will ask you always please try the whiskey neat and then drink it how you prefer.
How you like it.
Of course.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then coming up next is actually one of my kind of sneaky favorites. I always have a bottle of this at home on the bar. And tell us a little bit about, sour mash and what the difference is and why you guys chose to make it this way.
Okay. Well, so interesting enough, and I'll ask one of the first questions we get asked all the time. No, it is not sour.
Yeah.
Okay. So just in general, backing up and stepping away for a second, all of our whiskeys are made of the sour mash process. So as we're distilling that distiller's beer, as the beer is going through the still, the alcohols and compounds are being removed. The remaining liquid and grain that comes out of the bottom of the still, we call it thick stillage. At that point, when it comes out of the bottom of the still, we actually pump it upstairs to a strainer. We collect some of the thinner liquid. We call it thin stillage or setback. And that's the liquid that's going to get reused back into the mashing process. And this is the sour mash process that was first documented being used in 1818 by a person, Catherine Carpenter, in Kentucky as well. So it goes all the way back then, as far as we know. But it's a process that helps, one, with consistency, using less water. So as we're mashing, we'll add water, the thin stillage or setback, which also, by the way, has a lower pH associated with it. So at Michter's, we don't use liquid enzymes. So with our corn, our rye, and our malted barley, which provides the enzymes to convert those grain starches to the simple sugars we need for fermentation, it's very important. Sometimes you'll hear of whiskeys being made of the sweet mash, which is all water. We're adding some of that liquid back from a previously distilled batch to, again, help adjust the pH of the mash, which then ultimately we're adjusting the pH range of the fermenter, creating an environment, a healthy environment for the yeast. And so there's importance there all along. Now, namesake wise, it's paying homage to when Michter's was in Pennsylvania. Their number one selling whiskey at the time was also in the 1970s and 80s, was also called the original sour mash. This is not that exact recipe, but it being similar, it's that whiskey that's in between a bourbon and rye. The three grains, corn, rye, malted barley, all three are below 51% each, so it doesn't qualify to be that bourbon rye, but it still comes in a little sweet like that bourbon. I say there's a nice elegance across the palate and then finishes like a rye. It's, again, it's a very beautiful whiskey. If you do love cocktails, because there is a fair amount of rye in it, a Boulevardier is a fun one with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is kind of interesting. It really is a little bit of the best qualities of both of these kind of amplified a little bit. Like, for me, what I actually make a lot of Manhattans with this at home. I know I mentioned it with the rye, but I make a lot of Manhattans with that one.
And I love that. To your point, it's very versatile. Whether I say it's this or that, it can be used so many different ways.
Well, and it's just got a little bit more of those like herbaceous dilly notes turned up just a little bit, than what you get on the original rye. But like I said, one of my hidden favorites, one that I always keep on the back bar at home and love. So good job on this one. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Everybody should have a bottle of it on the back of their bar.
And then last but certainly not least, we have our unblended American whiskey. So tell us a little bit about this one and why it's named what it is.
So also, just again, when you see small batch, Michter's is either going to be a small batch or a single barrel product. Small batch for us is the equivalent of 20 full barrels, so truly small. Okay, so as there's no real U.S. definition of what small batch is, it just needs to be smaller and your largest, right? Ours are actually sized to the equivalent of 20 full barrels, so we don't have that ability to blend in subpar barrels. They have to be right when we go to use it. Okay, so that's something I'm very proud of, being single barrel, small batch. You have to have very high quality, consistent barrels. Now, the small batch unblended American whiskey, this one is our lightest at proof at 83.4. It's a sweet dessert-like whiskey. It's very approachable. Whether you're, a whiskey veteran or actually new to the category, this one's a great one because of the influence. In fact, Andrea Wilson, our COO and Master of Maturation, she'll actually put a bottle of this in her refrigerator and just serve it chilled. It's very versatile.
Interesting.
But it is a bourbon-style whiskey with that sweetness and so forth. But what makes it different is we're going to take the distillate that was made from this mash bill. Some of the distillate will go into our new toasted charred American white oak barrels. Okay, and then some of the distillate will go into our once used Michter's bourbon barrels. So when we dump for the bourbon, we'll hold some of those barrels back, and then we'll fill them, and they'll age, come back together, creating this very nice sweet dessert-like whiskey.
Interesting.
Yep, and that used barrel offers additional sweetness and a nice roundness to the whiskey as well, making very. And then, of course, fun cocktails, peach smashes, whiskey sours. You can't go wrong.
Definitely.
Things like that as well. So really, all of these though follow our 6 signature production techniques. They're all single barrel or small batch. The wood that we use for our barrels are all air-dried, seasoned, minimum 18 months, all the way to 60 months, 5 years, meaning that wood, when it's cut down to the stave-sized pieces, they're placed in these engineered piles of wood that allow for airflow in between the wood staves and, of course, left out to all the elements, rain, sunshine, snow. And during that process, there's a breakdown of the tannins as one of the importance of air drying and seasoning, but tannins impart bitterness and astringency, characteristics we're not looking for in our whiskey. And I like to think that you tasted through all 4 of them. There was none of that, right? And
no,
so
totally.
that's the importance. So we'll do it from 18 months all the way to 60 months. Barrels, to be a bourbon or rye, it has to be aged in a new charred oak container, being the barrel. We actually toast all our barrels before charring. Toasting is the art of low temperature and time when they place the barrel over a small oak-fueled toasting pot, and that fire inside will build up the heat, radiate, and break down the compounds much farther and deeper into the wood stave than just charring alone. So it allows you to get much more flavor extraction. Okay, so toasting and charring. Then we talked about the importance of 103 barrel entry proof, and then we'll do additional heat cycling. One of the reasons Kentucky is such a great place to age whiskey is our climate, the heating up, the cooling down. So when a whiskey inside the barrel heats up, it forces, and the air pressure inside increases, that forces the whiskey into the capillaries of the wood, and then when it cools down, it's coming back out extracting. That's called a cycle. That naturally occurs 4 to 6 times, let's say, over a course of a year. But in the wintertime, like now, it's cold, not a lot of temperature movement. We'll actually close the windows and the louvers on the building and then heat up. And we have data loggers with temperature probes in barrels. Very few distilleries do the heat cycling because it's very expensive. Our angel share does go up from, on average, depending on where you're at in Kentucky, like you'll lose around 2.5% angel share evaporation each year. We're upwards around 4%. So you have to be very careful. It's not something you can do every day. But look at the color. It just adds so much color, flavor. There's so much extraction allowed.
Yeah, that was actually when I went and visited your guys' facility, one of the, all 6 have very interesting reasons for them, but I thought that was one of the most interesting just because, even in Kentucky, a place like Kentucky, there is so much downtime where the whiskey isn't doing a whole lot, right? It's just sitting in the barrel. It's not moving in and out. It's not gaining a ton of flavor in the winter months. So, you guys have found a cool way to, one, decrease the amount of time where it's just sitting there, and because you age to, flavor, not an age statement, it can make a big difference over a short period of time.
Now, what I will say, and we're not just specifically doing it so that we can release sooner, because we're already going 5 to 7, but what we do know is each year that we do it, it adds many months of maturity to each year. So as we can't put that on the label, we know through data and experience, how it's increasing the different compounds and the flavors and so forth.
That's great. Well, and then, this is your guys' core four. These are the four that'll be on the shelf every day. But we did bring a couple of special ones to try. So we have Bombergers and Shanks. And first of all, which one would you like us to start with?
Yeah, let's start with Shanks.
Shanks, perfect.
So Shanks Homestead, Kentucky Sour Mash Whiskey, and Bomberger's Declaration. They're part of what we call our Legacy series. It pays homage to that early Pennsylvania history of Shanks being in 1700s, 1800s being Bombergers, all right? But it's a way for us to have innovation as well, okay? So since 2018, we've been putting the vintage on the label, and you would expect that each year we've changed either something in the mash bill or maybe the type of oak or how we're using the oak and so forth. So yeah, if you did a vertical, it'd be very cool to go from year to year.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. So starting out with the Shanks Kentucky Sour Mash Whiskey, there is a fair amount of rye in this, but for 2025, one of the special things that we did is we also aged in toasted French oak. And that French oak was sourced from the Vosges region of France, highly revered forest, known for very fine French oak, fine grain French oak, which allows for a lot of flavor extraction. And the wood staves themselves were air-dried seasoned 24 months.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, even on the nose, there's just kind of an explosion of those sweet flavors up front. The palate kind of follows.
Yeah.
It's really sweet up front, but finishes really, dry and oaky, which I really like. But yeah, that's, a really balanced whiskey.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And then up next.
Well, this one, so this one is going to be our Bomberger's Declaration. It's a Kentucky straight bourbon, and what I like about it is it's at 108 proof. So I always like to say it has a little more attitude.
Okay.
Okay. I get asked strange questions all the time. If you were stranded on an island, what bottle would you bring? And I'm like, well, if I wasn't planning on getting off the island, maybe the 10-year rye, because it's just such a beautiful, easy sipping aged rye. And then, but if I'm trying to get off the island, I think I want this bottle of Bombergers. It has a little more attitude. It's a big, bolder whiskey. It's big, rich whiskey. Now for 2025, it's our again, our bourbon aged in new toasted charred American white oak barrels, also along with Chinkapin oak. Chinkapin oak is a subspecies of American white oak, and it offers a lot of rich, fruity, chocolate, spicy notes to it as well. And, when you bring them together, it just creates this bigger, bolder whiskey. Now, also, the wood staves for the Chinkapin oak, some of the barrels were air-dried seasoned 18 months, some were 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years, meaning each of those barrels would have offered a different influence to the bourbon as well. Okay. Yeah,
again, another awesome whiskey. This is, I'm kind of a high proof guy generally, so this is kind of more to my general flavor profile. But sweet, big up front, kind of like Shanks, but in a different way, and then finishes again, dry, resiny, oaky. Just a really well put together, balanced, awesome whiskey. So, cheers. And then. Dan, thank you for being here. Appreciate you coming on. We're doing an awesome event with our whiskey club with Dan. So for those of you who haven't signed on to the wait list, we are full at the moment, but we are still taking wait list applications. We've got a ways to go, but we will work through that list as people drop off. It's a really cool club. We do at least one live event a month with awesome people like from the industry like Dan coming here. So definitely get signed up for that. And again, thanks for being here. Thanks for making awesome whiskey.
Cheers. Cheers.